A man with blood smeared across his mouth was devouring something with ravenous delight. What he was eating, however, was no ordinary meal. It was the flesh of a monstrous bull, a minotaur. In this world, adventurers who break the laws of logic and consume monsters commit a grave sin. It's a taboo, a forbidden act that no adventurer should ever dare to commit. In the city of Bologna, a labyrinth-filled region, there was one particularly infamous dungeon, the Miasma Labyrinth. The air inside was toxic, slowly killing anyone who dared to enter. Most adventurers avoided it, but not our protagonist. Known as the miasma scavenger, he was different. He frequented the labyrinth to harvest miasma grass, a plant that could purify the toxic air. This grass was also his primary source of income, was gathering enough miasma grass to last him 3 days when he heard a noise behind him. A group of miasma rats, monsters that thrived in the toxic environment, attacked. Skav swiftly drew his sword, decapitating one rat and fending off the others. Just as 2 more rats cornered him, a fireball erupted from behind, reducing the rats to ash. 3 men appeared, their leader extending a hand to Skav, whose real name was Rude. They claimed they had saved him, but Rude suspected they had been following him to steal his miasma grass. The leader denied it, but their condescending looks made it clear they saw Rude as beneath them. Reluctantly, Rude thanked them and backed down, knowing he couldn't take on all 3. Back in Bologna, Rude faced more humiliation. At a restaurant called Full Belly, a blonde-haired man mocked him, saying Rude's presence made the food taste like miasma. He belittled Rude for lacking useful combat skills, calling him a fake adventurer with only strange abilities like nullification and debuff. These skills made Rude immune to the miasma's poison but left him powerless in battle. Rude was known as the miasma scavenger, a lowly adventurer who collected worthless items from the miasma labyrinth. He was an outcast, rejected by every party for his lack of combat skills. Alone and disheartened, Rude lay in bed, overwhelmed by frustration and sadness. The next day, Rude visited the Adventurers Guild, hoping to find a party. To his surprise, the guild was bustling with excitement. A new labyrinth had been discovered in the Avilio Mountains, rumored to be filled with treasure. However, only adventurers of Class D or higher were allowed to enter. As a Class E adventurer, Rude was barred from joining. Just as Rude was about to leave, a smug adventurer approached him, offering Rude a chance to join his party as a pack mule. The man's condescending tone and dismissive attitude only added to Rude's humiliation. But Rude, desperate for a chance to prove himself, accepted the offer, hiding his resentment behind a forced smile. Rude and his new party set off for the newly discovered labyrinth in a horse-drawn carriage. The atmosphere was tense, but Rude remained silent, observing the others with suspicion. The party leader, Bayer, thanked Rude for joining them, explaining that they needed someone to carry materials from the labyrinth. Rude didn't respond, his guard still up. The other 2 party members, Sasha and Rak, questioned Bayer's decision to bring Rude along. Why him? Couldn't we find someone better? They asked. Bayer simply smiled and introduced himself as the leader of the Scarlet Sword Party, with Sasha and Rak as his trusted companions. All 3 were Class D adventurers, far above Rude's Class E rank. Rude introduced himself hesitantly. I'm Rude, a Class E adventurer. I'm grateful to join your party. Bayer asked to see Rude's guild card before entering the labyrinth, and Rude complied. Bayer was slightly surprised to see that Rude possessed the firewall skill. Rude explained that while the skill was too weak for combat, it was useful for cooking and providing light in dark places. Bayer chuckled, that's good enough. Just do your best, Rude. The group finally arrived at the new labyrinth. Sasha and Rak were visibly excited, eager to begin their adventure. As they entered the grand doors, they were greeted by a bustling scene. Many parties had already gathered treasures, and the labyrinth's interior was awe-inspiring, a testament to its former grandeur. Suddenly, the roar of a monster echoed through the labyrinth, startling Rude. A wolf lunged at them, but Rak swiftly killed it with his blade. Sasha followed up, effortlessly dispatching another wolf with her magic. Bayer, not to be outdone, cleaved through a third wolf with his sword. Rude watched in awe from the back, amazed by their strength. The party made quick work of the monsters, and Bayer expressed his relief that the enemies weren't too strong. They began collecting treasures. Rak, in his usual arrogant manner, ordered Rude to gather materials from the slain monsters. Rude hesitated, explaining that the materials were too damaged and the magic stones inside were likely destroyed. But Rak insisted, mocking Rude for being lazy. Feeling humiliated and frustrated, Rude approached one of the wolf carcasses. He summoned a small flame from his finger, thinking it might help salvage something. Rack laughed. "What are you doing? Planning to cook and eat it?" Sasha joined in, joking that eating monsters was taboo among adventurers, as it could lead to unpredictable consequences. As they laughed and joked, a deafening roar shook the labyrinth. A massive footstep echoed, and a towering figure emerged, a minotaur, a rank B monster. The atmosphere turned deadly serious. Everyone froze in disbelief as the towering minotaur emerged. The party was overwhelmed by fear, doubting their ability to defeat such a powerful monster. Bayer, the party leader, suddenly shouted at Rude, demanding his bag so he could use an item. Rude, confused, asked if Bayer had a plan. Bayer smirked, and without warning, he slashed Rude across the back with his sword. Rude screamed in pain and collapsed. Bayer then called out to Sasha and Rack, who quickly sprang into action. Rack hurled his axe near Rude, using his skill warrior's encouragement, a technique that redirects a monster's focus to a specific target. Sasha cast haste, a spell that drastically increased Rude's speed. Rude, bleeding and in agony, asked the trio if they had planned to abandon him from the start. Bayer sneered, of course. "That's why I brought you here, you miasma scavenger." Rude's heart sank as he realized he had been used as bait to buy time for their escape. As Bayer and his party fled, Rude was left alone to face the Minotaur. He shouted in anger, "You bastards!" but his cries fell on deaf ears. The Minotaur raised its massive axe, ready to crush Rude. Despite his injuries, Rude dodged the Minotaur's attack with surprising agility. He smiled bitterly, refusing to give up. But deep down, he knew this might be the end. The Minotaur charged again, slamming Rude into a wall with such force that it crumbled, sending both of them tumbling into a deep chasm within the labyrinth. Rude regained consciousness, unsure if he was still alive. He found himself lying on top of the Minotaur's corpse, which had cushioned his fall. Exhausted and starving, Rude knew he needed to eat to regain his strength. His eyes fell on the Minotaur's body. Remembering the words of someone from his childhood, "No matter how hard life gets, Rude, never give up," he made a desperate decision. He began to eat the Minotaur's flesh, knowing full well the consequences. In this world, consuming a monster's flesh transfers its mana to the eater, leading to a terrifying transformation known as the monsterized state. But Rude had no choice. It was either this or death. As Rude devoured the Minotaur's meat, he felt an unexpected change. His body began to transform. His eyes glowed, and fangs emerged from his mouth. The once weak scavenger was now something else entirely. In the dark depths of the labyrinth, Rude stumbled forward, clutching the Minotaur's massive axe. His senses heightened, and he could feel the presence of other monsters nearby. A swarm of bats attacked, but Rude unleashed his newly acquired skill, Roar, a terrifying bellow that stunned the bats and sent them crashing to the ground. Rude activated another skill, Physical Boost, which temporarily enhanced his strength. With a single swing of the Minotaur's axe, he cleaved through the bats. He then consumed one of them, gaining a new skill, Echolocation, which allowed him to detect his surroundings even in complete darkness. Sensing more monsters approaching, Rude stood tall, his confidence surging. With a fierce grin, he declared, "All right then, come at me. Let's see who becomes the meal here, you or me." Without hesitation, Rude swung the massive axe in his hands, cutting down every monster in his path. He smiled, relishing the thrill of battle. After defeating a one-eyed monster, he devoured its large eye, absorbing its essence. This became his pattern: defeat, consume, and grow stronger. With each monster he ate, his body regenerated, healing his wounds and filling him with explosive new energy. Rude felt invigorated, savoring the sensation of power coursing through his veins. For the first time, he wondered if this was what it felt like to be strong and respected. After clearing the area of monsters, he pushed open a large door and emerged from the dark labyrinth, shouting triumphantly to celebrate his survival. The scene shifted to the Adventurers Guild in the heart of Bologna. The atmosphere was tense, and everyone seemed anxious. The guild master, a man with white hair, listened intently as Bayer and his party recounted their fabricated story. Bayer claimed that a Minotaur had suddenly attacked their party, killing Rude before they could react. Sasha and Rack supported his story, pretending to mourn Rude's death. They even shed crocodile tears, saying, "If only we had noticed the Minotaur sooner, this tragedy could have been avoided." The guild master, unaware of the truth, believed their lies. He ordered a temporary ban on entering the labyrinth until the situation could be assessed. Just as the guild master finished speaking, the guild's doors burst open. Everyone turned to see Rude standing there, alive and well. The room fell silent in shock. How could someone reported dead be standing before them? Bayer and his party broke into a cold sweat. Bayer quickly approached Rude, whispering threats. "If you tell the truth, I'll kill you." Meanwhile, Sasha and Rack pretended to be relieved, asking Rude if he was hurt and claiming they had searched for him. Rude remained silent for a moment. Then suddenly, Bayer and his party found themselves unable to move. Rude shouted, "Bayer and his party used me as bait." The guild master demanded an explanation. Rude calmly recounted how Bayer had stolen his supplies, attacked him from behind, and used Rack's skill to lure the Minotaur toward him. Sasha had then cast haste on Bayer and Rack, allowing them to escape while leaving Rude to die. A truth officer, a high-ranking official known for their unerring ability to detect lies, stepped forward. After analyzing the situation, the officer confirmed that Rude's account was true and that Bayer's party had lied. The guild master declared that abandoning a comrade and using them as bait was a grave taboo. As punishment, Bayer and his party would have their adventurer status revoked and be enslaved. They accepted their fate, realizing there was no escape. As Bayer and his party were led away, however, Bayer tried to attack Rude first. Rude effortlessly blocked the strike and delivered a powerful punch to Bayer's face, sending him flying across the room. The impact was so strong it sounded like an explosion, leaving everyone in the guild stunned. Rude casually sheathed his sword and said, "Don't repeat your crimes, Bayer. It's not good for you." In the guild's reception room, the guild master invited Rude for a discussion. With a serious expression, he stated that Bayer might not be forgiven for attempting to harm a truth officer. But that wasn't all. The guild master also explained that Bayer and his party had lost all rights to the profits from the newly discovered labyrinth. In this case, Rude was now the rightful owner of all the treasures and rewards from the dungeon. Inside this pouch, there are about 200,000 Regan, the guild master said, handing over a heavy bag to Rude. Rude's eyes widened. This was an insane amount of money. If he had to collect medicinal herbs every day, it would take him years to make this much. This was, without a doubt, the happiest day of his life. However, just because he had money now didn't mean people around him would suddenly treat him well. But that didn't matter. With this money, Rude planned to buy better equipment and finally enjoy the delicious food he had always dreamed of. As he walked through town, his eyes landed on a shop selling equipment, and inside, he spotted something rare, a magic bag. The next day, Rude entered the miasma labyrinth. Without much effort, he swiftly eliminated the swarm of monster rats lurking inside. Then, he activated one of his skills, Appraisal. This skill allowed him to analyze enemy stats, not only for living monsters but even for their corpses. "How strong am I now?" he wondered. Opening his status window, he was shocked. His level had skyrocketed. Just yesterday, he was only level 7. Yet now, he had grown far beyond his expectations. Even more surprising, he discovered that he had gained multiple new skills, all acquired from devouring monsters he had slain. A wide grin spread across his face. This is incredible. But one thought kept lingering in his mind. Just how strong am I now? Determined to find out, Rude continued exploring the labyrinth, cutting down any monster that stood in his way. Floor after floor, he advanced. But something felt off. The monsters here were too weak. If he wanted to truly test his strength, he needed to go deeper, to face stronger enemies. After an intense journey, Rude finally reached the 24th floor. Before him stood a lizard man, a towering humanoid reptile, clad in iron armor, gripping a sharp sword in its hand. From a distance, Rude carefully observed the creature. Activating Appraisal, he examined the monster's stats. Level 25. Decent skills. A small smirk formed on Rude's lips. This one might actually be worth fighting. Moving silently, Rude snuck up behind the lizard man, then swung his sword down in a surprise attack. Slash! But his blade only grazed the lizardman's arm. The monster flinched in shock before immediately fleeing. Rude narrowed his eyes. He knew that lizardmen never traveled alone. If this one was running away, it was most likely calling for reinforcements. Without hesitation, Rude gave chase. The lizardman turned a corner, leading them into a narrow, dead-end passage. Rude smirked. "You're trapped now." But then, the lizardman grinned. A bad feeling crept up Rude's spine. Suddenly, 2 more lizardmen emerged from behind him. Rude's heart pounded. He had walked straight into a trap. Now there was no escape. The only option left, fight. With his sword gripped tightly, Rude prepared himself. A 3-on-1 battle was about to begin.
Alright, boy. If you want to know the next stories about Rude, just comment below, and I can make the next video of this manhwa.